How we doing today, people? Happy day 13 to you guys. What is going on? How you feeling today? Day 13, that's a big accomplishment. Remember, we started on day 0, so we're almost halfway done. I think we might be halfway done. How about that? That's not bad. Seems like just yesterday, we just thought about starting this thing. Now we're off and running. Seems like we've been doing it forever. Kind of, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? Now, I wanted to check in with you guys. You check in with yourself, okay? Check your levels. Ask yourself, how am I doing? Do I got that fire stoked? Is that fire still stoked? Am I excited? If not, you need to stoke that fire. Go find something to look at, to get excited about again, okay? You gotta manage those levels. Am I keeping that critical eye locked down? Do we got him on lockdown? He hasn't been beating you up, has he? Telling you how much you suck? How you'll never amount to anything? If you hear anything like that, make sure you lock him down in the basement, okay? Now, let's talk about our tools for a minute. We had the simple shapes. We talked about those. Very important. That's how you develop your ideas fast. That's how you find your problems, your errors, your drawing issues. Like if you make a T-Rex arms, you could pop them arms back out with a simple shape and be going on down your road. Like it didn't even happen. You ain't even got to tell anybody you made that mistake. Look like a big old goof, you know? Don't worry about it. Then we've been talking about that cube vision. You know what I'm saying? When you look down at the paper, you don't just visualize it as a flat plane. You visualize it as a cube that you put other cubes in. And you let the cubes simplify the perspective. Okay? Now I wanted to show a book, of course, real quick. This guy does simple shapes. I got this book a long time ago. I don't know how to say it. I think it's Ski Rin. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to show this book because it does simple shapes and he shows how to use markers to render. And there's just something I love about markers, especially when it comes to industrial design or product design. They just make it look so pretty. Alcohol-based markers and how they blend it together and make it look all nice and beautiful. Isn't that fun? But yeah, he just uses simple shapes to design all these and then goes in over it to render it with the marker. Now there's just something about that texture with that marker that just gets me all excited. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about that too. Not today, but we're going to talk about how to render with markers, how to get this effect, how to take your simple shapes and use that as like the mannequin to hang the clothing of rendering on. That'll be really exciting. We're not just going to do that with markers. We're going to do that with the watercolor. We're going to talk about gouache. We'll even do crayons because crayons are awesome too. You know, they're beautiful. They make some awesome textures and everything else in between. We'll talk about the pen and ink. We'll talk about the no-tan. You know what that means, right? The no-tan images. That means it's just the black and white. I don't know. I think it's a Japanese term or something like that. But it just means the positive and negative of the image. So there's the contrast is turned all the way up and you got the black and white. It helps you to see things a lot easier when you're finding your shadows and doing all that shadow mapping and whatnot. But you know you got to be able to do them simple shapes and have that cube vision in order to hang on it. Now I wanted to talk about how we're going to get there. Well, one of the fundamental tools that you got to have don't have nothing to do with drawing. Don't have nothing to do with painting or anything like that. You know what it has to do with? It has to do with your schedule. You gotta have a schedule, okay? So we've been doing pretty good these past 13 days. We're about halfway through, right? We've been keeping up with our 30 minutes a day. Okay, we know we might take a day off, Sunday fun day, and do something a little extravagant or whatnot, or we might catch up. Whatever, it's no big deal. We go at our own pace here, right? Maybe you get all excited and throw down 5 hours in one day. That'd be crazy, right? But hey, that counts, right? 5 divided by 30 minutes, that's a lot of days right there. But you got to have a schedule. What do I mean by that? You want to have a schedule that say, hey, maybe on Monday and Tuesday you work on the simple shapes You grind it out. Do your cubes. Do your skulls and your faces inside your cubes to get them fixed out right. But then on Wednesday or hump day, maybe you do something fun to help stoke that fire back up so that you're ready to go back into the grind on Thursday and Friday. And then right around the corner, you got Sunday Funday to help stoke that fire again. So you're ready to go in on Monday and Tuesday. But it's also a way to navigate your goals, right? The schedule is how you steer your life to achieve your goals. You can't just say, oh, willy-nilly out there, oh, I want to have this goal, I want to have that goal. Well, you can, but the way to get there is to then apply it to your schedule. You see, the schedule is the interface, right, between your dreams, your goals, and reality. So you construct your schedule so that it helps you achieve those goals. You know what I'm saying? Now, somebody said they wanted to be able to draw like Bill Watterson. They wanted to be able to draw like Charles M. Schultz, Peanuts. And I tell you what, those were my goals too. And so I got all excited about it. And of course, I went ahead on my sketchbook and I said, let's draw some Calvin and Hobbes. Right? So I drew some Calvin and Hobbes. But I didn't just go willy-nilly drawing Calvin and Hobbes. I wanted to turn the Calvin and Hobbes into part of my stepping stones to get to my goals. You know what I'm saying? So I looked at the Calvin and Hobbes and I said, what are the simple shapes that Bill Watterson used in order to make Calvin and then Hobbes? What are the simple shapes he used to make the teacher? What are the simple shapes that he used to make them as they raced down in their wagon down the big hill? Right? And how does that apply to cube vision? How do I get my perspective in that? I built the cube that they sat on, and I used that to dictate the perspective. Think about that for a minute. It solved all my problems right there. I put one cube down. I didn't have to worry about perspective ever again after that, because the cube influenced everything else. You see how that works? Now look over here. We got Calvin sitting at a desk with the simple shapes, right? Then I used the cube vision first to envision what that would look like. So it's just a cube with a smaller cube with a medium cube sitting on top of it. And that was it. Then all I had to do was fill in the rest of the details. That's what I'm talking about. That's all you got to do. You use your little tricks and your simplified process in order to build the excitement. And it takes care of all the problems, and it allows it to be done a lot easier. Now, I just went and grabbed my Calvin and Hobbes books and went to town. There's all kinds of lessons in here for you to learn. Even with color. You see what I'm saying? Boy, I love the way he used that color. That was something else. All kinds of stuff that you can learn in here. Right? If you just apply the simple shapes, the cube vision, and you begin to understand. Now, another one that I loved was Mother Goose and Grimm. That was one of my favorites back in the day. I love that. So, of course, I had to get this book. Now, the more cartoony you go, the more rules you can break. And so that's pretty fun, isn't it? That's a lot of fun. Now, I've also been talking to some people, and they say, oh, I can barely scrape together 15 minutes to do it. Or, I only got 10 minutes. Well, I tell you what. Go ahead and get yourself a small sketchbook and just leave it open on your dresser or on your desk. Okay? Maybe you're brushing your teeth and you go in there and just sketch something out for 5 minutes. You see what I'm saying, people? Maybe you're sitting on the bus. Well, put that little sketchbook in your backpack and get it out and just draw something on the bus until you get to your next stop. Use your minutes. Squeeze them out like nickels and dimes that you're putting into a big bucket, and they're going to add up at the end of the day. I'm telling you, they will. And the hardest thing to get moving is what? Something at rest. Once you get that thing at rest moving, it picks up speed and becomes easier to push. It's called momentum. So let's generate some of that, okay? Now, I wanted to say one more thing before we bounce out of here and get to flying. There's 2 ways to change your life. Just 2, all right? You can do small changes over a long period of time, like a little river running through the Grand Canyon, and it carves out the Grand Canyon over a long period of time, little bit by little bit by little bit. And you look back, and after a couple hundred years, you got this big Grand Canyon, right? Or you can do a huge flood all at once. Like some big flood. You know, that stuff's going down on Texas or in New Mexico right now. That's a big flood. Changes everything all at once, you know? Now, what's the difference between the two? The little bit by little bit by little bit is relatively pain-free. The all at once is a ton of pain. A ton of pain. I'm going to leave you this one story. Now, I used to be a big-time surfer. I surfed all over the world. Okay? Hawaii, all over the place. North Shore. Surfed down in Costa Rica and all over California coast. Everywhere. All kinds of boards, all kinds of swell, all kinds of surf. I was out there. If it was sun up, I was out there. If it was twilight and the swell was good, I was out there. I remember cutting class in college because I would be driving on my way to college and I'd look out and I'd see the waves crashing. I'd be like, oh, no school today. And I'd be out there in the waves, you know. If they were really good, I'd run in for a minute and get myself a little breakfast burrito or something and turn right back around and be out there again. I loved it. Still do. Now, I was on a surf trip down in Costa Rica. And I was driving on from Witch's Rock. Now, if you're a surfer, you know where that is. That's up there by Tamarindo. I was driving through from Witch's Rock to another spot. And we were driving, my brother and I were driving on one of their roads, one of their highways, and we were going down this big long turn, right? It's a slow turn, and of course the forests were on both sides. Big old forest, the jungle. You know what I mean, people? 3-story jungle on both sides, and we're sitting there driving through in this truck, and it was awesome. But the roads were terrible. You know, the roads are potholes everywhere. We had a 4x4 truck. We were bouncing up and down, whatever. You know, we were driving through there and out in the middle of nowhere, basically. And we're driving around this dog leg left turn, and all of a sudden there's this semi-truck. And this semi-truck is trying to avoid the potholes. And he had gone from his lane into our lane, and he had diagonal catty corner across the road, and there was nowhere for us to go. So my brother was driving, he whipped it off the road, and we hit a whole bunch of trees, and then we went smack dab into a concrete bridge. And I tell you, that wreck pulverized my femur. And I was out of commission for 2 years. I almost lost my leg. Now that right there changed my life in a heartbeat. And what came with it was a lot of pain. Sometimes it's necessary to be like that. Sometimes you can't avoid it. But if you use your schedule and you do little bit by little bit each day, you'll get those results with minimal pain. So let's take advantage of that. Let's do it, okay? Now, I got no doubt in my mind that each one of you will be able to achieve their goal if you take your schedule and you put it in every day and you stay diligent. Because we all want to fly. So let's all get out there and let's fly, okay? Why don't we?